groups of people. So I'm going to group them together. So people in their 20s and 30s, and 40s and 50s, and I want to get to the 60s group later on because I want to talk about the super and retirement. So, regardless of age, I think every group has got their own worries. But if I'm a person in my 20s or 30s, what would be your advice? And if I'm in my 40s and 50s and I look at things a little bit differently, I assume, because I've got families, I've got a home loan and stuff like that, what would be your advice with them?
It's effectively the same advice, but someone in their 20s could be single.
Yes.
Living at home with mum.
Yes.
Or
potentially they are living with their boyfriend somewhere else or something like that, or renting a house.
Or they could be married with homes and children.
That's correct.
Right? So it's very hard without understanding someone's specifics. And even with grouping age demographics doesn't equate to necessarily the same issue, but there may be. So for instance, on superannuation, someone in their 20s might ask the question, and their 30s and 40s or 60s. And the responses might be a little bit different. The 20s, they've got a long time, markets go up and down, don't stress, don't panic, just look at the balance less, and this will...
So would you look at that and go, that's just a loss on the paper? Just accept that and that would...
Well, it's not a realised loss, and markets do move up and down, and this is an extraordinary event that we're going through, and the GFC was also a great shock, and so was the .com in 2003. They happened. So, but they've got a very long-term horizon. So on aspects of assets like that, it's different compared to someone in their 60s who are closer to retirement, and what should they do? The response might be a little bit different. But yeah, I'm not sure. The question. What would be my advice for 20s? Stop spending on wants,
what was that? They talk about this smash avocado.
Yeah, right. So cut back. We really need to cut back our expenditure, irrespective of age. It doesn't matter how old we are. If we're because the majority of stress. So there's two aspects. Anxiety is something that we're all experiencing because of the unknown. We don't know what the future is. But there's stress. Financial stress is generally related to cash flow, not to balance sheet.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have $1 million in debt, as long as you've got good, secure income, it's not an issue.
Yeah, true.
But the stress is from cash flow. So most of us are experiencing cash flow stress, which is why we've got to contract expenditure as much as we can and maximise any incomes. 20s, this would be a great experience for people in their 20s, particularly if they're living financially independently, because many of us don't get these lessons until later in life. So I think it's a benefit for them. There's a silver lining for younger people going through this, and I think it's also important for people in their 40s or 50s who have children in their low teens or middle teens, to make tough decisions and say no to their children. There are some, I'm dealing with a family at the moment that they really struggle to say no to their children, and they can't afford to say yes. And this is where we need to separate one from me. Yes, we want to be able to give our kids everything we want, right?
Yeah.
And I'm an expert on children because I haven't had any children, so I can profess that. But we all want to provide what we can to our children and give them what they want.
Yeah.
But now is a time that we have to make really tough decisions and say, no, you can't. We need to protect the unit and our financial well-being. You're going to have to go without. There are some...
The reason I'm giggling is because I'm thinking about my daughter, for example, who is at the moment, her concern is when she can get her Nike pair of sneakers and when she can upgrade her mobile phone. That's her world, and I'm like, well, you're not going to get either of those. You have to wait,
And that's the experience that people in their young 20s that are living independently now will get to experience, because younger people, when we're dependent on someone else, we don't really truly understand the value of money. Because it just comes.
It just
comes from
comes,
mum and
yeah,
dad.
varies,
Right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it grows under pillows,
Yeah,
we
of
lose
course.
teeth and all sorts of,
Absolutely,
you know,
yeah.
so we don't really truly understand the value of money until you start working and then having to save, you know. So that's a hard thing to say to your children, no, you're going to have to wait. But I think it's absolutely necessary for most people that are in that situation with financial stress. They have to you know, the most important, and I tell parents this, the most valuable security you can give your child is being financially secure yourself.
Yeah, good point.
So you know you can't be giving away to your children at the detriment of eroding your own foundation.
Yeah.
Financial security.
Mate, I want to skip this because I know we only got limited time, so I don't want to. I know each of these questions we could spend hours and hours on that as well. But I mean, you mentioned something about 20s, 30s. We've got plenty of time for the super to recover. The super goes up and down in this market, and that's how it is. But what would be your mindset around someone who's in their 60s, for example, you know, or even potentially 70s, and they rely on the super as far as their repayment comes, and suddenly now the super is dropped by 30%, 40%, 50%, you know. So what would be the action they're going to take, and how should they deal with this situation?
So again, reducing expenditure, building reserves, but it depends. So depending on how their super funds are set up and how they're managing their money, right? There are different approaches you can take to manage money. And in some cases, where people have one single investment option, they might have some cash as well, but they might have a single investment option. As they're drawing from their money, from their superannuation every month, they're selling down units. Okay, and so the units, or the units that are contained will have growth assets and defensive assets, and if those growth assets are down in value, then they're going to be potentially realising losses every time they sell a unit. So you want to preserve that. You want to try to minimise that. And what the government has done is allowed the amounts, when you have a superannuation pension and you're drawing from that, it's called an account-based pension. It's the labour name for it. There are other forms of that in the past, but essentially the government mandates or prescribes what you must draw from that as a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So those minimums are now reduced for a period of time, and people can draw less if they need to. So to preserve your wealth, again, if that's a concern and you're in a pension phase of superannuation, then reducing expenditure, potentially reducing the drawings to minimise the damage from that. Other investments structures might be that they have different asset classes separately. So you can have
The cash component and a share component.
fixed interest, you know, property, share, East Australia, international. You can have different components, and obviously you want to be avoiding selling growth assets at the moment and just focus
So
on cash.
do retirees have the option to choose what asset class they can sell if they're going to be withdrawing?
Not if
money?
you've got a single investment option.
Okay.
So there are different approaches, and this is where going to an advisor and understanding. It's our role to understand what your specific needs are around strategy solution in terms of complexity.
Sure.
So the simple solution might be what we call a bucket approach, where you have for a person in retirement, where you have some cash for 1 to 3 years worth of cash, fixed interest for the next few years, and then you'll have your growth asset or separate buckets.
Sure.
And you draw from your cash bucket, and then you draw from that. So you preserve the long term for longer. That kind of thing. And in other times, you will have a cash bucket and just a single investment option. So it depends on the advisor, it depends on the consumer as to what's best for them. But certainly for anyone in pension phase, avoiding selling assets that have got growth components will minimise the impact. And speaking to their advisor, getting advice on what they should be doing, minimising drawings if you can live on that to take advantage of the government's change in legislation. It'll probably be temporary. They did that before during the GFC.
Yeah. So potentially, I mean, we talked about one of the first things you would do after coming out of this as well. Potentially speaking to an advisor is not such a bad idea. I'm giving you a plug, buddy, but that's probably it. I mean, on a more serious note, that is potentially a very good thing to do, right? To ensure that you kind of future-proof yourself for.
Yeah, I mean, financial planners haven't got a great reputation, and I can understand that there's been a lot of reluctance from consumers to see an advisor. And the changes in legislation and the rules and the education standards, I know will have a positive impact, and it'll be a wonderful profession that emerges when we get to that stage. But I've always seen the value in advice because I deal with consumers every day. There is a misbelief that you need to have money to get value from seeing an advisor. You don't necessarily have to. Estate planning is one aspect, for instance, where you can get tremendous value knowing that all of the estate and wills and everything is put away, but has no tangible financial benefit, right? So I would not be telling any of my friends or any of your viewers to wait until this blows over, because there are measures that you may be able to take right now that you're unaware of, and should be considering to help preserve your situation.
Okay, thanks for that. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes, sure.
So, coming out of this, let's just say it's a few weeks. I'm not going to say a few months. But when you come out of this, what is the first thing you would do?
Sarush, you might find this hard to believe, but I'm actually a really prudent manager of my own money.
Okay.
So I don't own a lot of stuff, and I've stopped accumulating stuff many years ago. I wasn't always like that. I don't feel like I'm there or better than anyone else, but I place more value on intangible relationships, peace of mind, those kinds of things than I do money. What will I do when I come out of this? Practice more gratitude. I think that's something that we should all be spending more time on the things that do matter as opposed to things that don't. And even going through this whole situation in Australia, we're better off than many other countries. I'm not sure that much will change. I've cut my expenditure in every. I run a small business too. I've cut my expenditure. I've cut my personal expenditure to preserve what I have and make it last. I don't know what I'll do beyond. My investment strategy is aggressive, but I understand the risks and I'm comfortable with that. If I had, one of the things we haven't talked about is some of the opportunities that some of your viewers might have right now to invest. The markets have taken a really big hit. It might be a good time to get into the market over a period of time.
It's interesting you said that about the market. I mean, I was actually going to ask you about shares, property, investments. So if somebody felt comfortable and they were looking at the long term and they wanted to make some investment now, for those clients, what's your views about property versus shares? Are they both good? Are they just about individual kind of appetites, or is this?
It is about individual appetite, but it's also about diversification. So there's a number of aspects that we look at when we're planning an investment portfolio. I won't mention all of them, but the main ones are diversification, making sure that you are diversified. Liquidity is really important, being able to access money if you need it. Cash flow, making sure that you're able to manage the cash flow and it doesn't cause stress. So there are pros and cons with properties and shares. The biggest con, I believe, for shares is its intangibility. You can't touch it. Property you can touch, you can drive past it, so that's my house. But there's a lot of cons with property on that flip side. Right now, people are experiencing, forgetting about the fact that people can't afford rents, that's an anomaly. illiquidity at the moment is a real issue. You can't sell a bathroom in a house to get some money.
Very true.
Whereas you can sell some shares. You would still potentially make losses on both, or the shares you may not necessarily make losses. But so liquidity is a really big one. Cash flow at the moment. Once you invest in shares, depending on direct managed funds, etc., but you typically don't have to put your hands in your pocket again to maintain that.
Sure.
You receive a dividend if they pay dividends, and but with rental properties there is more management and maintenance and outgoings that are required, that kind of thing. Even if you're borrowing money to buy shares, borrowing money to buy property, then there are obviously loan payments on a share portfolio. There was another point that just came to mind. Diversification. So if you're looking to invest, there's a minimum amount you've got to spend to buy a property.
Yeah.
Right. And if you buy one property for $500,000, then that's one property, one suburb, one city, one town, whatever it might be. And it's not what we would class as diversified. So if an investor came to me and had $2 million in shares or whatever, a large amount, and said they wanted to buy a property, then there would be potentially a recommendation that property might be suitable. But in most cases, people have got their eggs in one basket, and whether the property market's going up or down, or the share market's going up or down, there are still downside risks associated, I think more so with property than shares.
Sure.
But performance could be better on either side.
Yeah. But you actually see now as a great opportunity for investment.
I think
because you're taking a long-term approach as well, correct?
Yeah, but you've got to be really careful, because as I explained before, cash flow and reserves are really important. I would want to make sure I've got reserves that are going to carry me through for 6 months, 12 months before I consider investing.
Yeah.
So if you've got some spare cash in bank accounts and think, now I'm going to get in the market, you may end up having to sell them very quickly to pay for living expenses.
Yeah, true.
So I'd be very
careful. Get your priorities right, obviously.
I'd be very careful about investing. It would be, I'm not saying, there would certainly be people out there that are in a position that, now they can consider investing, or at least, putting some funds into the market. But I'd be very, again, it's an individual basis, the recommendations would come.
Yeah. Mate, I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll wrap this up. As far as getting financial advice goes, for a middle-aged person, this was a question that came, with relatively low to middle income, where can they go?
So there's a number of places.
Because some people are worried about, well, how expensive is it? It's only for the rich people. It's only, you mentioned yourself about, it doesn't necessarily have to be about someone who's affluent. It could be about estate planning. It could be about other stuff as well. It could be even just about confirming that you're on the right path, for example. So, is it just for the rich people, or is it for everyone? And where can they go to?
No, obviously there's a cost involved, and it depends on what advice is required. But I would recommend any of your viewers shop around. Starters. Now you can go to places like the FPA, Financial Planning Association, and they can find advisors in your local area if that's who you want to speak with. These days, now that we're all forced to work on Zoom, you could probably go to anyone in Australia. Well, you could. Technically, the legislation covers all states, but obviously, having someone locally might be more helpful.
Yeah.
You can go to the MoneySmart website. That has an ASIC advisor register search engine.
Yep.
So any advisor that you come across, most people find me through referral, either from an accountant.
What's your company called?
Netwealth Financial.
Netwealth, okay, yeah.
So either from a friend or someone that's already used my services, or from a referral from an accountant or finance broker. So whatever names you come up with, do some research. I would go to that financial advisor register and search and make sure that they're all hunky-dory on that side. Every advisor in Australia is on that register, including histories of any bans education standards, etc. And then ask them, you've got to understand what you're going into before you start. You don't want any surprises. Fees will range in price depending on what someone needs. So, for example, the way I work, which is not the same as everyone works, the way I decide is that I host an advice assessment meeting with staff, and there is a set fee for that after we have a conversation to see whether that's worthwhile, and we really look at whether or not you need advice and what areas of advice you might need before we take the next step. And that meeting takes about an hour, and then I send an email saying this is the prescription of what advice I think you should have and why, and then this is the cost of that. And if they decide to go ahead, or they might say, look, we only want advice in certain areas. But an advisor has a duty of care to ensure that we look more broadly at the consumer's issues. So you might come to me and say, I need to get a will, that's what I want to do. I would actually have to say no if you did not allow me to look more broadly and say, okay, I understand that's what you want, but I do recommend areas of advice in these other areas. And if those areas affect the advice that you do want, then I must decline to give you advice. We actually have a duty of care under the code. So, but definitely shop around and ask questions.
Oh, and pearls of gold. Just that's fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you got as much as I did out of this conversation. Paul, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out Paul's company as well, NetWealth, is that correct? NetWealth Financial Planning. What's the website for it? nwfp.com.au. So please check him out and make sure that you support Paul for the time that he's given us as well. And we'll see you soon. We might get you to come back again, mate, and talk a little bit more about some of the needs that clients might have. So all the best, guys. We see you soon. I'm Suresh from The Wellness Place, Paul from NetWealth. We see you next time. Thank you. Bye.